Business Radio.
Hello and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of Community Relations at Geovia Financial Credit Union, along with Donyshia Boston Hill, CEO, Keeper the Brand, Marketing and Digital Agency. And we're focused on being the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship.
We're bringing you business tips, tools, advice, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we're interviewing the top business leaders in the industry.
And helping provide us with business empowerment today is Elisa Padilla, and she is a C-level marketing executive in sports and entertainment. Elisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ray and Donyshia. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Thanks for coming.
Well, we're excited to have you.
Absolutely. And Ray, with full transparency, I won't tell you how many decades now I've known Elisa, but it seems like yesterday that we first met.
Yep, that I feel the same exact way.
So Elisa, for those of you who are new to you and your fabulousness, can you share with us your background and a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a marketing executive. I have over 2 decades of marketing experience, specifically in the sports and entertainment sector. I have worked for brands such as the New York Knicks, the Brooklyn Nets, the Miami Marlins, Barclays Center, Apple, Nickelodeon, and HBO. And most recently, I joined the other side, on the agency side at Rock Nation. I'm the former SVP of Creative Strategy and Marketing Partnerships. I took that job in January of 2020 after spending 2 years with the Miami Marlins as head of marketing community relations. And due to COVID-19, I am currently a free agent because, as you know, the world of sports and live events have came to a complete halt in March of 2020. So I am currently, exploring new opportunities.
Now, there's a lot of projects that you've worked on. We'd love to hear some details about some of the projects that you've worked on. Specifically, I guess let's start with the Marlins. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the Marlins in June of 2018 as head of marketing and community relations. And I was responsible for the marketing of the team. And that included everything from brand advertising to creative to digital to in-game presentation, community relations, and the foundation. And I was also responsible for the team's relaunch and rebrand. So that was very, very exciting. When I joined the team under the new ownership group, they had already they redid the logo and the uniforms. So when I came in, I was responsible for putting together the marketing plan of how we were going to relaunch the brand in Miami to really make that one-to-one connection with the fans in South Florida, to really elevate the brand and the positioning of what the new ownership group stood for, and also to get more butts in seats.
And Elisa, you do a really fantastic job at brand transformation. I watched it come to life, and I'm sure Ray did as well. When you were at the New Jersey Nets, you did your team led the entire Hello Brooklyn campaign, which you moved from the New Jersey Nets to Brooklyn Nets. So
yeah.
And that was fantastic. So, when you start, focusing on the brand and the sports brand and, the transformation is coming to life, what is your thought process on that?
Well, I think my initial thought process is, where is the brand's, health assessment today? When I got to New Jersey in November of 2010, I have to stop saying these dates because I'm dating myself. But anyway, when I joined the Nets, they were 18 months out from moving to Brooklyn. And I joined as director of marketing for the team, and it was the first thing that I wanted to understand was, what do people think about the New Jersey Nets right now? So we were a lame duck. We were playing at Prudential Center. We were a tenant. Brand health wasn't all that great. So that was the first thing that I look at. And then the second is, okay, where do we want to go? Where are we going? And what is the North Star, if you will, of the goal of the brand transformation? So with the Nets, it wasn't a rebrand. It was truly a brand transformation, despite the fact that the team kept its original name and the logo was inspired by the original shield of the logo, but the color palette was new. Everything was new. And we were also opening up the new home of the team at Barclays Center. So that was also very exciting. So that thought process, we did a lot of research to understand who was coming with us from a season ticket holder perspective. We did a lot of research about Brooklyn, and you know, Brooklyn is it's a brand in itself, and Brooklyn Knights are very prideful. And what was very interesting was that in 2012, it marks the 43rd year since the Dodgers left Brooklyn to go to LA. Wow. So that was an emotional hook for us, because we thought, wow, you know what? Brooklyn Knights are starving to have a team to call their own. So all of those findings and coupled with the fact that Brooklyn Knights are so prideful, the team knew that we only had one time to do it right. So when we came up, you know, when Hello Brooklyn was born, it was really about coming in a very humble approach and having our voice come from within the borough. And we approached that brand transformation as really an expansion team, very different than Miami, where Miami was truly a brand refresh.
Now, I have to ask you, because your work in sports is definitely notable. I do have to ask you about Nickelodeon and HBO, though. As we mentioned, I'm a big movie buff, big movie fan. So tell us about some of your work with those companies.
Yeah, so that was Ray. Those positions were very intentional. When after I left the New York Knicks and joined the NBA, I wanted to go back to school to get my MBA in marketing. And part of the graduate school program, it really made me realize that I wanted to be a diversified marketer. So once I got done with my MBA, I had the opportunity to go join Nickelodeon, and very, very interesting from a media perspective. That was really my first entry, if you will, into Hispanic marketing, because Nickelodeon, I worked in the live events group, and Nickelodeon did their television shows via live shows in theaters in Mexico and in other Latin America countries. So it was really the first time that I was exposed to, wow, taking something that's English language here in the United States on television and transforming that onto a stage in a different language. So that was great. And from a media perspective, really understanding the power of television and understanding the power of television targeted towards kids and tweens. So that was a whole different mentality. And then I was lucky enough to move on from Nickelodeon and moved on to HBO, worked in the HBO sports division, where I worked on the pay-per-view business. And there the goal, the North Star of that whole division was to make sure that everyone, you know, on a Saturday night when Mayweather versus De La Hoya were going to fight, that you would press, you know, the remote control button and pay $89.99 for the fight. So that was really, you know, I learned about boxing. I learned about the stories behind the boxers. And what I mean by that, similar, if you're a movie buff, you know that, you know, there's always a storyline and the plot. And it was always, you know, when they were talking about who was going to fight, it was always, okay, well, what's this guy's story? What's this guy's story? And what's the storyline of the boxing match. So it was fascinating to me. And I remember watching my first live boxing event in Las Vegas at MGM, and it was a super featherweight fight. And Eric Morales was one of the boxers, and I just remember sitting there thinking, what an art to this sport, right? Like, you have to have your feet, have like the coordination of your feet, the coordination of your hands. I mean, I was just so impressed. And I had a really good run at HBO. I was there for quite a while and worked on some really great boxing events.
Well, yeah, I mean, the boxing events, it's pretty fantastic. And definitely, I mean, Rocky is one of my favorite movies. There's a reason that the movies turn to boxing for some great stories. You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College. My name is Ray Schwetz, and I'm here with Donyshia Boston Hill. And we're here with our guest, marketing executive and sports and entertainment, Elisa Padilla. Elisa, now you mentioned, the stories, you mentioned diversification. Obviously, marketing, there's an art to that as well, and telling stories, there's an art to that as well. How do you get your voice heard as a marketer above others? How do you differentiate yourself in this area?
Well, I think from a brand perspective, Ray, I think that brands that do it the best are the ones that take a 360 approach in regards to marketing, right? They hone in on their consumer. They know exactly what their consumers' needs and wants are, and from a brand perspective, what problems they're solving for their consumers. And when the consumer interfaces with the brand, no matter whether it's digital, radio, or television, it's all the same exact messaging and consistency. And I think that those brands are the ones that are the most successful because they really are clear in their offerings, and they're very clear on how to move the needle with their consumers.
Absolutely. And Elisa, persistence is definitely the key to success. You diversified your portfolio with a mixture of sports and entertainment. What would you say would be a good quality that someone can find in a C-suite level marketing executive?
I think that a great quality is just someone who leans in with empathy and compassion. And what I mean by that is, the folks that are in the C-suite are folks that obviously have, not only are they're masters of their craft, but they have leadership qualities and they're able to work in a collaborative manner. But I think that one of the most important things is that when you're sitting in that C-level suite is to really be able to listen and to be able to understand someone else's point of view, because everyone's experiences are very different. So while you may have a different point of view, as long as you're both and everyone is aligned on what the goals and objectives are, I think that that's critical for success.
Absolutely. Now, I've watched you, many moons ago, spend countless hours in, the world's most famous arena, and then, go to Brooklyn and the Marlins. And, that's a lot of hours. So what are some misconceptions that people out there think when they see some of the marketing executives working inside, your chosen field?
I think, you know what, Tanisha, I think the biggest misconception is that people think that people who work in sports and entertainment, that it's a glamorous job, that, you have access to the athletes, that you have the best seats in the house. And that's really not the case. I mean, you definitely work long hours. You're away from your family. You spend more time at the arena than you do at home with your family, and you don't have access to the players. You're not constantly getting autographs. And I think that that's a misconception. And what I will say is that what's exciting, from at least from the that I've traveled, going back to Madison Square Garden, when I remember, as a very young marketing assistant, I would have to meet like the delivery truck, the company that was delivering the premium items. And then I would have to chase the union guys at the garden to open up the storage room to put, those boxes in the storage room. And then on game day, have to do the distribution, to make sure that the 20,000 fans coming to a Knicks game were going to get their premium items. So that's the stuff behind the scenes that people don't see. Or, when most recently at Marlins Park, when we were doing our fan fest, the laps that I did on the concourse to make sure that everything was spotless, that there wasn't any, gum marks on the floor. Like, those are things that people don't think about, but those are things that, as an executive working for a team, like, that's part of your responsibility. It's just not focused on, the vertical that you're responsible for.
One of the things that I admire about marketing people is that you have to speak to so many different people, and that's got to be tough to get people from all areas of the brand that you're focusing on to all be on the same page. What do you feel is the best characteristic that of yours that kind of helps you be successful in this role?
I think, I'll answer that in two ways, Ray. One is I'm super curious. I'm super curious about details in terms of how fans enter a building, how fans, whether they turn left or right, where they sit, like, what are their habits? I'm super, super curious from that perspective. And then on the flip side, I would say that I love to observe people's behavior, because I think that if you understand your fans or your consumer, you're going to be in a much better place from a marketing perspective to communicate to them in the most effective way. And the way that I think about, the curiosity and the observations is that I think about that in actionable results, right? So it's about, how do you evoke the emotion to drive action to get share of wallet? Because at the end of the day, no matter what business you're sitting in, whether you have your own business, whether you're the chief marketing officer for a team or an arena, you're selling. So, and when you think about where people are spending their money, you want to make sure that they're spending it with you.
Absolutely. And Elisa, so you've meshed entertainment and sports, and people listening will say, "Oh my goodness, that's just the best of both worlds." And I'm sure, moving from sports and, the Marlins over to Rock Nation was still, a culture shock in some respects. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that there is definitely a difference between sports and entertainment. In sports, you are promoting a team, right? It's a brand, and that team has 12 players or 40 players, or 50 players, right? Depending on what league or team you're working for. When you work on the entertainment side, you are working with an artist, you're working with a promoter, and then you're working with the venue. So making the transition from the team side to the agency side for Rock Nation, I think that the biggest shock was that we were promoting people, right? So I was responsible for supporting the sales team, and they were out there selling the athletes that Rock Nation represents, the artists, the events, and then the foundation. So it was very, very different when the sales team was speaking to, let's say, a Revlon, and trying to find the right artist to align with Revlon, versus if you're sitting at a team and you're talking to Revlon, you're talking about not only the team, the association with the team, but also where you're going to have signage in the arena or in the ballpark. So I think that was the biggest shock, and really just understanding that process, and ultimately that the athlete and or the artist had the final say to say no. I'm not interested. That doesn't align with my brand, my personal brand.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Elisa Padilla, C-level marketing executive in sports and entertainment. My name is Donyshia Boston Hill, along with Ray Schwetz on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Now, you're too young to look back too far, but looking back in your career, is there a story in particular that you look back and you go, wow, I'm really proud that I was a part of that. I really made an impact here.
Yeah, I think that being part of a team that opened up Barclays Center and moving the Nets back in 2012, we announced we unveiled the Nets logo in April of 2012. We opened up Barclays Center in September of 2012. The Nets played their first game in November of 2012. Ray, and Donyshia, that group of people, whether you worked on the arena side, the team side, in guest services or security, we will forever be bonded, because we were the part of the team that did something so historical, in Brooklyn. And opening up Barclays Center was I'm just so proud of being part of that team, because it's really, I refer to it as a once in a lifetime opportunity, where you get to move a team and open up an arena in the same exact year. That's pretty special.
And that made it such a destination. It was that I would agree that that's a magical moment. Definitely, one for the record books.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So, Elisa, we definitely need to discuss the elephant in the room. You are a woman in sports. The Super Bowl, 2021 had its first female umpire, two first assistant, coaches, full-time assistant coaches. How does it feel to be a woman, in sports, making history, and how has that impacted your life and your career?
Well, I think that, I'm going to steal a line here from our current Vice President, Kamala Harris. I definitely, I may be the first in many, but I definitely won't be the last. And it is just so amazing. While we still have so much more work to do to elevate women in sports and to continue to open the doors for women in sports, I think of how impressive it is that the Miami Marlins are the first team to have a general manager be a woman, in Kim, and to know her career. She spent 30 years to get that opportunity. So when I think of my personal career, and where I came from, and my background, I'm just really, really proud that I've been able to do this work and do it and make an impact. And hopefully what I've done is really just pave the way for many more women in sports, and specifically, women of color, Hispanic, Black, Asian, to say, hey, you know what? If Elisa did it, then I can do it.
Yeah, as a dad of 3 daughters, I definitely am very happy to see the roads being paved, and for them to have that opportunity as well. Looking at things now, if you were to pick a dream job or a dream company, who would you like to work with, or what would you like to do? What would be that dream job for you?
Well, Ray, wow, that's a loaded question, because to be honest, like, my dream job was to be a chief marketing officer of an NBA team. And I achieved that. And when I think of what's next, I would love, the way that I look at it now, it's not that I'm chasing a title because I've already checked that box. I'm chasing to have a seat at the table with a company that's innovative, that's forward thinking. And if it's on the team side, that would be great. And if it's not, that's okay too, because the way that I'm looking at it is I just want to be able to take my diversified background and really make an impact and help drive the business forward.
Absolutely. And how do you see the sports world and entertainment world changing as we go, post COVID?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question and something that I've been, studying and just studying in the sense of looking at what people are doing. And I think that post-COVID, I think that whether you're on the sports side or whether you're on the entertainment side, I think that you're going to have to try and figure out what's the hybrid, right, of the guest experience, because people are home now, and they're able to watch an NBA game, an NFL game, a baseball game, and they're not getting in their cars. They're not spending money. They're not buying food at concession stands. They're not purchasing merchandise, right? They're looking at their TV and they're probably on their phone being on social. So I think that the biggest thing is, how are you going, what's the middle ground? Because people are going, I'm convinced, and I have no data to back this up, I'm convinced that people are going to starve to be, in an arena cheering on their team or, clapping for their favorite entertainer. But how are you going to make people feel that it's safe? And number two, how do you meet in the middle so that consumers continue to share content and be their own content creators when they're literally at the ballpark or the arena versus sitting home on their couch?
That's a tough one. I'm a huge concert goer, and I do miss that experience so much. And you're right; it's a very difficult, very very difficult thing. How do we transition? What's the one thing that you'd like to leave our listener with about what you do? What would be maybe the one bit of advice, or maybe what would be the one thought you'd like to leave them with about who you are and what you do?
Well, I think that the one thing that I would just like to just say to everyone listening, no matter where you are in your career journey, I think it's just really to just go for it. If you believe in something and you believe in yourself, go for it. And while it feels like the world is upside down right now, keep your eye on the ball. No pun intended there, but just keep your eye on the ball, because that's your goal and no one's going to get you there but yourself. So just keep going.
Spoken like a true MVP.
Oh, thanks, Ray.
And where can we find you? Give us your contact info.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Elisa Padilla. You could also find me on Twitter at EPReekin. And you could also find me on Instagram at Kick It by EP.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. Thanks for a great conversation.
Thank you, Elisa. We're so excited to have you. I'll leave you with DB's philosophy. And I had a philosophy today, but after speaking with Elisa, we're pivoting. So if Elisa can do it, so can you, and push forward and your dreams will be a reality.
Thank you for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston Hill and Michael Chung, your co-host and producers. This is an NCC Foundation Business Leaders Council production. Visit ncc.edu/WHPC for more information. We're available on iHeartRadio as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation, on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. We'll talk with you next week.
Tower Talk Business Radio.